how to unlock your real estate investing potential in 2023. What we're going to be covering, the real estate investing life cycle. Stage one is house hacking. So what I really want to do is take a few steps back and talk about the ladder or talk about the life cycle of real estate investing. I get asked all the time, okay, where should I get started? How did I get started? What property should I go after? Should I flip or become a landlord? So I'd like to show you what I consider the cycle of a real estate investor. The starting place in this is foundation. Not everyone will need to start there, but most people will. And if you don't, you just can move up to the next one. If you have enough money to invest, good credit, you want cash flow, you start at a different point. So to take advantage of 2023 or any market for that matter, you really have to understand where you're at. You also have to understand what is your best strategy for you based upon your current situation. And that's going to be different for me than it is for you. It's going to be different for Lewis than it is for Will. It just is. But the process and the things you can do is similar. So I believe that there's a 10-step to financial freedom in real estate investing. Okay, it starts with a foundation. This is where you have the vision, the goals, the why. This is where you start saving some money so you can invest and maybe even get a side hustle to help get that going more, because it is going to cost you some money to get started. I tell people to plan on about $5,000 between software tools, resources, those types of things. You're going to have some money going. The next one I go into is what's called house hacking. Okay, we'll get in more detail on that. From there, you can move to what's called wholesaling. From wholesaling, you can move to what's called reselling. And from reselling, you can go to land flipping. Then you can move to fix and flip. Then you go to gap financing. Then you go to property management. Then we go to BRRRRs or rentals. Then we go to limited partnerships. And then we become a hard money lender. And that's kind of the real estate life cycle here. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go all the way to become a hard money lender. Some people don't want to do that. It doesn't mean you have to start with house hacking. Maybe you're happy where you live and those types of things, and so you want to jump in at land flipping. But these are the 10 things you jump in where you're at based upon what your circumstances are and what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. So today, we're going to talk about that first cycle, that first stage in the cycle. And for each of these, I'm going to be talking about what it is, what the benefits are, the prerequisites to make this actually happen, and also what's not required, because there's a lot of preconceived notions of what's required to do this type of investment. Then I'll also talk about what I don't like about it, and I'll also talk about who this is a good strategy for. So that's what I want to do with each one of these. So with all these stages, there's going to be a method to find the property, a system to follow and to execute, a management strategy, a profit potential, and this is a deeper conversation, and we have this more individually. So if you want some, you can talk to one of our associates. Okay, stage one, what we're going to talk about. So we skipped the foundational stage. I want to get to the investing. We're going to assume that you're past that foundational stage, and this is house hacking. This is one of the things that help build my net worth. Shouldn't say more than anything, but it had a significant impact is probably the best way to say it. So what is house hacking? It's a way to generate income from the place you live. The difference between assets and liabilities, right? Assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money away. So technically the house you live in is actually a liability. It's not an asset, even though it does go on the asset column, but you're spending money on that. And you're gonna need a place to live. So assets put money in your pocket, liability takes money out of your pocket. So most of the time, your home is a liability. Now, I want to tell you my first house hacking story. The very, very first property that I purchased was actually a duplex. We turned it into a threeplex. We lived there, and the rent from the two tenants basically paid our mortgage. And so we lived there practically rent-free or payment-free because of our two wonderful tenants. And this is a great strategy. We turned, the other side it was 2 beds, 1 bath on one side, 3 beds, 2 baths on the other. But one of the bedrooms and one of the baths on the other side was downstairs. There was a separate entrance. And so the idea was to have one tenant cover the majority of my mortgage payments, or have the 2 tenants is probably the better way to say that. For example, the payment was $1,500, let's say. I don't remember the exact payment. We're talking 23 years ago. Let's say it's $1,500. Let's say the rent was $1,000. So, I paid $500 rather than paying $1,000, which in this example, I'm pretty sure it covered the majority of it. But with this, I'm saving $500 a month. Now, the thing is, it really comes down to what are you doing with that $500 a month? You should be setting that aside so that you can invest that into something else. That's where it becomes really important. So in addition to that, where I'm living there cheaper or maybe even living there free, I'm getting all the other benefits that real estate have to offer. So I'm getting that rental income that is helping lower my payments. I'm also getting appreciation, the values that are going up over time, the appreciation. Over the long term, about every 10 years, real estates go up. Lots of times they even double in that period of time. You can also get the business tax write-offs, your cell phone, your gas, those types of things. You can also get the depreciation. You can get the depreciation schedule over time, and you can protect yourself from rent inflation. My payment, as long as I got a fixed rate, is not going to be going up. But I can tell you this, my rents in the last 15 years have gone up considerably, and I would say have more than doubled. Whereas if you would have gotten that 30-year fixed, your payment is the same. Amortization is something people don't really realize. Every time you make that mortgage payment, or hopefully your tenant makes that mortgage payment for you, they're paying a little bit down on principal. And that's money they're paying towards your debt, not money that you're paying, which lowers the amount that you actually owe to the lender. So they're actually paying off your debt for you. And then just a great long-term cash flow plan is one of the things that you get with real estate. But here's the deal. I want to make it even better than that, okay? With the site that had the three beds, 2 baths, we had that separate entrance. We made a kitchen down there, and that way we could rent that one in the basement to cover my entire mortgage. This is called house hacking, okay? This is what house hacking is. Now, there's lots of other ways to house hack. This is one of them. There's other ways to turn your house or your rental into an asset. You can buy a Plex. You can rent out rooms. If it's a house, you can rent room by room instead of renting it all and get a higher amount. You can rent out the upstairs or the downstairs. You can rent out for storage. You can literally rent out your garage for storage. I have a person that I pay them to put one of my trailers there, and it's at the side of their house, and I pay them every single month, right? So that works out really well, and I'll show you a resource to do this. You could rent parking or RV space. You live there, you fix up, you resell. This is a really good strategy for tax-free. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. Renting out rooms. So we'll get into all these in detail. Renting out rooms. The idea is you could buy your home, okay? You have common space that's like kitchen, family room, and those things, and then you rent out each bedroom separately. This works really good like around college towns or where there's singles or those types of things, and you're basically renting by the bedroom. And you could divide up the space, and you could have separate entrances if you want to rent like the upstairs and the downstairs. And one of the pro tips I will tell you from my duplex story from a long time ago, keep those stairs in. Don't tear the stairs out. You may need to put them back in to resell the property. You may have some problems where you have to put them back in. Recommend that you keep those stairs so that you can get back to that if you want to. And you may want to sell one house as a duplex, or you may want to sell it as a single family house down the road. Kind of like a mother-in-law apartment is something that can bring value, and it may bring value to have them still connected. So my real life example, my brother-in-law, he rented the nice upstairs of his home, and he lived in the basement, which wasn't as nice. But what happened is he realized he could get much more rent from the upstairs and increase his cash flow. And so it's a short-term sacrifice for a long time or a lifetime of financial benefits. So it's really a mindset on this. Renting a room for storage. One of the things you can use is what's called neighbor.com. It's really cool. You can say, I've got a closet, I've got a bedroom, I've got a garage, I've got whatever, and you can put it on there, and then you can rent it out. It's a platform, exchange the money, really cool. Neighbor.com. And so I'll put a link in the description to get there as well. So you can do this on a place that you rent. Can you do this on a place you rent is really what we're asking here. And the answer is you may and you may not. It just depends. So let's say you're renting a house. and you want to rent the RV pad at the side of your house, or you want to rent the garage or storage in that home, what happens here is you need the rights to what are called sublet, okay? Most rental contracts don't allow that, but you don't know because there's not like standardized rental contracts. It comes down to what the agreement actually says. You can also talk to your landlord and get permission, say, hey, are you okay with me doing that? So then you can actually get that permission. And you can also just say, I'm gonna try and see what happens. But if you do that, you wanna make sure who you're renting for is a month to month. And I'm not advising you to go against the terms of your rental contract. Just wanna make that very clear as well. If you want to make sure that your agreement is much longer than your storage renter's agreement. So let's say that you're renting the property and you've got 18 months and the landlord's okay with you, renting out the RV parking since you're not using it anyway. And you want to make sure if you've got that 18 months, you want to make sure that whoever you're renting to is only for 12 months. Although I will tell you, I think on neighbor.com, it's a month to month, and I really like that. Okay, we're house hacking as well. This is one of the biggest house hacks that most people just simply do not understand. And that is to live there, to fix up, and to resell it. This is one of my absolute favorites. I went from purchasing the duplex that we turned into a threeplex to purchasing a fixer-upper that we actually lived in. When my father-in-law actually saw this place, he looked at my wife, his daughter, and is like, are you really going to live here? And luckily, my wife's amazing. She's like, oh yeah, this has so much potential. We're gonna make this thing wonderful. I'm so glad that she has that attitude and that we did that. So we spent time painting. We spent time putting in new carpet. We spent time cleaning it up. I've spent time putting tile in. And this is when my wife decided that she doesn't like my tile work. I understand why. I really would like to get another crack at it, but so far she hasn't let me, and that's probably for the best. So we did as much as we could, did as much work we could, and then we hired out specialty work. It took years so we could afford that, so we're just doing a little bit at a time, which is one of the reasons it's great to do some of those repairs, do that on your own. But what most people don't know is the home sell exclusion. This is where the house hack comes in. The IRS will let you keep up to $250,000 as a single person or $500,000 for a married couple before you have to pay any tax on the profit from that house. So literally, you could buy that house for $100,000, and if you sold that house for $600,000, that $500,000 profit that comes to you. Now there are some costs in those things, but let's just say it's a full $500,000. As a married couple, you would be able to claim that and pay zero taxes on it, okay? This is a huge tool. This is a big, big, big tool. Now the catch is you've got to live there 2 out of the last 5 years. So you could rent it for part of it, but you've got to live there 2 out of the last 5 years at this current recording, and you want to run all this stuff by your CPA as well. So you can live there for 2 years, then you can rent it, and then you can sell it. Or you could simply just say, hey, I'm just gonna sell it after 2 years and go find another one and do it again. I mean, literally, if you could buy the house, fix it up, make, I don't know, even $100,000 in 2 years and do it again and do it again, you could eventually pay cash for your own house. Taxes are one of people's biggest expenses. You've got housing and you've got taxes. Most people simply just don't realize how much they really pay in taxes. Because one of the things with taxes is there's all these hidden things, right? So like my car registrations due, well, that's a tax. You've got fees, that's a tax. So like all these things are taxes. And once you start adding it up, one of the things you may not realize is your employer pays FEDRA, FICA, and you do as well. So that's a tax that your employer is paying on your behalf. Those are all things. So if you can actually get money where you don't have that tax, this is big time. So this is the idea with house hacking. The house hacking is how can I turn my liability into an asset or somewhat into an asset, or how can I live there for free? These are all different strategies, from renting out rooms to renting out the downstairs to separating to using like neighbor.com or those other places to rent out the RV, rent out the garage, rent out even storage in a basement. You can rent those types of things out. And this is step one, which is house hacking. Now, you may be saying, hey, Ryan, we're really happy where we're at. We don't want to move. We've got kids here, whatever the case is, awesome. that's okay too. Like, I think this works really well when you're younger. I think it's really well when you have young kids. I think when they're more established, it becomes harder. Like right now, I am not going to house hack. It's just not something I want to do. I'm pretty set. I like it. I'm not going to house hack. So I would skip this step personally, but I did this step when I was getting started. And depending upon your personal situation, it may be a great step. If not, you'd move on to the next step. So let's just do a quick recap here. What you have learned today, we've gone through the real estate investing life cycle. The foundation, the vision, the goals, the side hustle, the house hacking, which is the first step. Then we go through wholesaling, we go to resale, or all things, and then we go to land flipping. And we'll talk about all these at a later date. Fix and flipping, gap financing, property management, BRRRR rentals, and then also limited partnerships, and then lastly, hard money lender. Again, you go in where it makes sense for you based upon your goals, and you stop where it makes sense for you. You don't have to become a hard money lender. You don't have to do limited partnerships, but you are gonna have to get up to some type of rental property, because remember, the definition of financial success is how many days can I go without having to work. Now, it doesn't mean you don't want to work. I love to work. But how many days can you go without having to work? If that number is you could go forever, that's what financial freedom is. A lot of people get confused with the difference between financial freedom and high net worth. High net worth, you can make a lot of money and be absolutely broke. You can be driving a nice car, have a nice house, all those types of things, and be absolutely broke because you could owe more and you could be paying more than what you actually make. That happens a lot. It happens a lot with doctors, happens a lot with lawyers, happens a lot with all kinds of those professions where they feel like they need to look and feel a certain way. So you got to be careful with that because that can be a big trap. Whereas if you are saving money and you're taking that money and you're investing that into something that's then going to pay you, that's how you want to buy your toys or nice things and that type of stuff. So I'm not saying you can't have those things. What I'm saying is there's got to be some delayed gratification. So I can tell you I have some toys. I like my toys, but I didn't pay for my toys. My tenants paid for my toys because what I did is I took some of my money, I invested that into a house. That house investment has gone up over time and the rents have gone up. And so for that money, I am then taking that money to buy like a snowmobile, okay? So if I take that money and I buy a snowmobile, I still have my money. That money that I put into the house is still there. My tenant is still paying down the rent. And my money is still there in an asset that's going to produce for me for the rest of my life and my kids' lifetime if I wanted to. And then based upon that cash flow, I'm then taking that money to go buy something. Now, I could take that same amount of money and I could reinvest that into something else so that it could build another asset so that actually it could build more and more and more. But at a certain point, you have to say, you know what, I really want to go snowmobiling with my buddy Mike, which I'm going to be doing this next week and super excited about. Shout out to Mike. Stage one, house hacking, a way to generate income from the place you live. Having one tenant cover the majority or all of your mortgage payments. Some of those methods are renting out rooms, upstairs, basement, garage, RV, pad, living there to fix up and then reselling it tax-free.